Ethan had always thought exploring alien worlds would be a mix of excitement and careful planning. He never expected it to include accidentally becoming part of someone else's mating ritual. The dense forest stretched around him, a living maze of glowing plants and strange sounds. Every step he took made the ground hum softly, and the faint mist carried a scent that was both sweet and metallic. He adjusted the straps of his exploration pack, feeling the familiar thrill of venturing where no human had stepped before. The alien jungle was alive in ways Ethan could not fully understand. Tall trees with crystalline leaves shimmered in the soft sunlight filtering through the canopy. Strange creatures peeked from the undergrowth, some resembling twisted insects with luminescent shells, others moving like floating shadows. Ethan knew he had to be careful. One wrong step could trigger a defensive response from any of these creatures. But curiosity had always been his driving force. He adjusted the small scanner on his wrist, designed to detect biosignatures. That was when he noticed her. She was standing near a grove of tall, spindly plants that glowed faintly in shades of blue and green. Her skin was smooth and pale with subtle patterns that shifted like liquid when she moved. Her eyes were large, almond-shaped and the color of molten gold. She was clearly watching him as well, her movements cautious but deliberate. Ethan froze, unsure whether to make a friendly gesture or retreat. He had trained for encounters like this, but nothing could prepare him for the presence of a sentient alien being, who clearly had no idea what he was. He raised his hand slowly, hoping to show he meant no harm. The alien woman tilted her head as if studying him the way a human might study a strange artifact. Then in a sudden movement she took a step back. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to stop, but his curiosity pushed him forward. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small device, a bio-interaction tool meant for cautious study of alien life forms. He activated it gently, thinking it would scan her patterns and provide him information about her species. Instead, the device emitted a soft hum and a tiny pulse of light shot toward her chest. Her eyes widened. Her hand shot to the center of her chest where the light had touched. A soft glow began to spread in intricate patterns across her skin. Ethan's heart stopped. He had no idea what had just happened, but the alien's reaction made it clear. He had triggered something very important. Wait. I didn't mean... Ethan tried to explain, but she held up her hand. Her eyes, once cautious, now showed shock and a hint of something else, something he didn't understand. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice musical but sharp, each word carrying weight. "I swear I didn't mean anything," Ethan said, taking a careful step back. "I was just scanning." Her gaze softened slightly, but the glow on her chest continued to pulse. Ethan realized with growing horror that this was no ordinary scan. He had activated something deeply personal, something sacred to her species. She took a deep breath, and Ethan noticed how her body seemed to tense, almost as if she were struggling against some invisible force. Then, almost reluctantly, she spoke again. "You have activated the mark. It cannot be undone easily. You are bound to me until it is resolved." Ethan felt a cold wave of panic. Bound to her? He blinked, trying to comprehend. Bound? Like a contract? Yes, she interrupted gently. "It is a biological bond. Until the process is resolved, you and I are connected." Ethan swallowed hard, realizing he was now part of something he barely understood. This was not a threat in the conventional sense. She was not angry at him. She was shocked, perhaps even afraid. But the implications were clear. He could not simply walk away. I didn't mean to," he said again, louder this time, hoping the words would somehow fix the situation. The alien woman, Lyra, as he later learned her name, studied him carefully. Ethan noticed that her breathing had slowed, as if she were trying to calm herself. "Your species does not understand," she said finally. "Most humans could not comprehend what you have done. It is irreversible temporarily. You must come with me until the bond is assessed and handled." Ethan's mind raced. Come with her? Where? How? He looked around the alien forest, knowing there were dangers everywhere, and realized that refusing would only make things worse. "Okay," he said reluctantly. I'll come with you. I don't even know how to undo this." Lyra's expression softened, though her body remained tense. She gestured toward a narrow path leading deeper into the forest. "Follow me," she said. Her movements were graceful, almost gliding over the uneven terrain. Ethan hurried after her, trying to keep up. As they moved, he observed her more closely. She was unlike any being he had ever encountered. Her skin shimmered faintly under the forest light, and the patterns from the mark still glowed softly, like living lines of light tracing intricate designs. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes, so expressive, were constantly assessing him. "You understand this is serious," she said, breaking the silence. "The mark carries biological and social consequences. It is not something you can ignore." "I get that," Ethan replied. I didn't know it would do that." "I really didn't mean it." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, but the edge in her voice softened. "Intent is irrelevant. The bond exists. We must follow the process. There is no alternative." Ethan's stomach sank. He realized that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. Not only was he on an alien planet full of dangers, but he was now tied to a being whose culture and biology he could barely understand. He tried to focus on the practical side, survival. If he could stay alive, maybe he could figure out a way to resolve the bond safely. They walked for hours, navigating through thick undergrowth and strange, glowing fungi. Ethan kept his eyes open, scanning for predators, while also keeping an eye on Lyra. Occasionally, she would glance at him as if measuring his reactions, testing whether he could be trusted. Finally, they reached a small clearing. In the center stood a pool of crystalline water, its surface shimmering with colors that shifted like liquid rainbows. Lyra stopped at the edge and gestured for Ethan to sit. "This is where the bond is assessed," she said. "It is private. You must not interfere or panic. The process will determine the next steps." Ethan nodded, though his mind was spinning. Private, assess? He had no idea what to expect. But as he looked at her, he noticed a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. She was powerful, graceful, and clearly in command. Yet she seemed as anxious about the situation as he was. The assessment began. Lyra closed her eyes, and the glowing patterns on her chest expanded slightly. Ethan watched in awe as the intricate lines moved like living threads, connecting them in a way he could not understand. He felt a strange tug in his chest, subtle but undeniable. It was not painful, just present. He realized the bond was already affecting him, subtly altering his awareness and attention. He looked at Lyra, who opened her eyes and met his gaze. There was no malice there, only a quiet intensity. He understood then that this was not a trap. She was not trying to hurt him. But the weight of the situation pressed down on him like a physical force. Hours passed. Ethan struggled to remain calm, to understand the strange sensations coursing through him. Lyra, too, seemed focused, her body still and her breathing measured. Finally, the glow faded slightly, leaving faint traces on her skin. She opened her eyes fully and looked at him. "The assessment is complete," she said softly. "You are compatible in ways your species cannot understand. The bond will remain until the process is resolved. We must travel to my people. There the next steps will be determined." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind racing. Compatible. The word was foreign and unsettling. He was trapped in a situation that defied logic, biology, and culture. But as he looked at Lyra, he noticed something else. A quiet trust, a recognition that they needed each other to survive the journey ahead. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll go with you. But you have to promise me one thing." Lyra tilted her head. "What is that?" "You tell me everything I need to know. No secrets. I can't fix this if I don't understand it." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. You will learn, but understand that not all knowledge can be shared at once. Some things are dangerous if misunderstood." Ethan took a deep breath and stood. The forest around them seemed quieter now, almost waiting. He felt the strange connection to Lyra pulsing faintly, a reminder of the accidental activation that had changed his life forever. As they set off toward her people, Ethan realized one thing with absolute clarity. Nothing about this world or his life would ever be the same again. He had stepped into a bond he didn't understand, and yet for the first time in his life he felt a thrill not from exploration alone, but from the uncertainty of the bond and the strange, radiant alien beside him. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing. He had to survive, and somehow, he had to make it through this adventure without making things worse. And with Lyra at his side, bound to him in a way neither of them fully understood, the real journey was only just beginning. Ethan and Lyra moved through the alien forest, the soft glow of her mark pulsing faintly with every step. The deeper they went, the stranger the world became. Trees twisted into shapes that seemed impossible, their bark shining with colors he had no names for. Some plants emitted soft hums, and insects with translucent wings buzzed around them, leaving trails of sparkling light. Every sound was amplified in the quiet of the forest, from the distant splash of alien water to the rustling of leaves that weren't even moving. Lyra led the way with confidence, her movements graceful and deliberate. Ethan followed, careful not to trip over roots or disturb the fragile ecosystem. He tried to remember everything he had learned in his training, but nothing could have prepared him for this level of alien complexity. "So, you really can survive out here?" Ethan asked, trying to make conversation. His voice sounded small in the vastness of the forest. Lyra glanced at him, her golden eyes reflecting the shimmering light. "I have lived in these forests since I was young. My people know every plant, every creature, every path. You are learning quickly, but you still do not understand the danger." Ethan nodded, a little embarrassed. "I guess I'm learning the hard way." She gave a faint smile, the first sign of warmth he had seen from her since the activation of the mark. "You are human. You have resilience. That much is clear. But you are still fragile." Ethan swallowed and tried not to think about the implications. Fragile. He had faced deadly alien predators before, and yet somehow this bond made him feel more exposed than ever. Hours passed as they moved through the dense foliage. The forest shifted subtly, the air growing warmer and more humid. Strange mist curled around their ankles, and the ground beneath them seemed to pulse in rhythm with the glow of Lyra's mark. Ethan couldn't ignore the strange sensation that the bond was affecting him, subtly tugging at his awareness. He found himself watching Lyra constantly, noticing the way she moved, how her breathing stayed steady, and how her eyes scanned their surroundings with unerring focus. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the forest. Ethan froze. His hand instinctively went to his side, where he kept a compact stun pistol. The growl grew louder, and from the undergrowth emerged a creature he had never seen before. It had the size of a large wolf, but its skin was iridescent and scaled. Its eyes glowed a faint green, and long, spindly limbs ended in sharp claws that dug into the earth as it moved. Lyra's body tensed, and Ethan felt the tug of the bond sharpen. Her mark glowed slightly brighter. "Stay close," she whispered. "Do not run." Ethan nodded, heart pounding. He had been trained to handle dangerous encounters, but something about this predator made him nervous. The creature crouched low, muscles rippling under its shimmering skin. Its gaze locked on them, and Ethan felt an instinctive fear settle in his chest. Lyra stepped forward, hands raised. She spoke in a language Ethan couldn't understand. The sound was melodic but commanding, each word resonating through the air. The creature paused, tilting its head as if trying to process what she said. Then, almost reluctantly, it backed away and melted into the shadows of the forest. Ethan exhaled sharply, his knees feeling weak. "That was incredible," he said, still catching his breath. "How did you—" Lyra shook her head. "It is my people's way. We do not always fight. We communicate first. Many species will listen if approached with the right tone. You must learn this or you will not survive." He nodded, realizing that survival here wasn't just about strength or weapons. It was about understanding, patience, and respect. He felt the bond tugging at his mind again, a quiet reminder that Lyra's life and his own were now intertwined. As they continued, Ethan tried to absorb every detail of the forest. He noted plants that glowed in response to touch, insects that moved in synchronized patterns, and the faint musical hum that seemed to echo through the air constantly. Lyra occasionally pointed out things he hadn't noticed: edible plants, safe paths, hidden dangers. He was learning quickly, but he knew he was still far from understanding the world around him. By evening, they reached a small clearing. A stream of clear, sparkling water ran through it, and strange flowers with translucent petals floated on the surface. Lyra gestured for Ethan to sit beside her. "We will rest here tonight," she said. "It is safe. The predators avoid this area." Ethan lowered himself onto the soft ground, feeling exhausted but also oddly exhilarated. "I can't believe how alive this place is," he said, letting out a deep breath. "Everywhere I look, there's something new." Lyra nodded, her gaze focused on the shimmering water. "The forest is alive. It reacts to every being, every movement. That is why your presence, your bond, changes things. You affect it without realizing." Ethan frowned. "So, the mark isn't just about you and me?" It affects the environment subtly, Lyra said. The bond between our species is powerful. When activated, it can alter interactions, instincts, even behavior. You must be cautious. He swallowed, realizing how delicate his position was. Every step he took, every movement he made could have consequences he didn't understand. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, but he also felt a strange thrill. This was no ordinary adventure. It was a journey of survival, trust, and discovery. Night fell, and the forest transformed. Bioluminescent plants lit the area in soft hues of blue and green. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, chirps, calls, and the occasional splash of something moving in the water. Ethan tried to stay alert, but exhaustion was catching up. He kept his weapon close, though he trusted Lyra's instincts more than his own judgment at this point. Lyra sat across from him, her posture relaxed but alert. The faint glow of her mark bathed the clearing in soft light. Ethan felt the bond again, a quiet awareness that they were connected in ways he could not fully explain. It was subtle, but he sensed her emotions, curiosity, caution, even faint amusement at his human clumsiness. "You must learn to understand the bond," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "It is not just biology. It is trust, attention, awareness. You cannot ignore it." "I'm trying," Ethan said. "I really am. It's just hard to process." Lyra's eyes softened. "Yes, it is difficult. But you have resilience. That is why I tolerated your presence before fully knowing you. Few humans could survive the activation of the mark and remain calm." Ethan felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. He had never thought of himself as special, just cautious and resourceful. Yet here he was, surviving an alien bond that could have overwhelmed a less adaptable human. The night passed slowly. Strange sounds echoed around them, and Ethan found himself awake more than once, watching the forest and keeping an eye on Lyra. He noticed the way she adjusted her position, the way her eyes darted to the shadows and the quiet confidence in her movements. He was learning from her, absorbing every detail. By morning, they were ready to move again. Ethan felt a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but he also understood that it was necessary. The bond, while unexpected and confusing, was guiding him in ways he could not fully comprehend. As they walked, Lyra began to explain more about her species, their customs, their survival strategies, and their unique abilities. Ethan listened carefully, realizing that understanding her culture was essential not just for survival, but for navigating the bond responsibly. "Your species values freedom," Lyra said. "Ours values connection. The mark is not just physical. It represents commitment, attention, and awareness. Humans rarely understand the depth of it, but you are learning quickly." Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm trying. I don't want to mess this up any more than I already have." Lyra gave a small approving nod. "Good. That is the right attitude. We must continue. The next stage of your understanding will be tested soon. There are others in the forest, creatures and beings who will test your instincts, your courage, and your ability to act under pressure." Ethan felt a surge of determination. He had survived dangerous situations before, but this was different. This was a test of mind, body, and bond, and with Lyra by his side, he felt more capable than ever. As they moved deeper into the alien world, the forest seemed to respond to their presence. The glow of the plants intensified slightly, and the air felt charged with energy. Ethan realized that he was not just a visitor here. He was a participant in the living ecosystem, and his connection with Lyra was amplifying that participation. For the first time since the activation of the mark, Ethan felt a quiet sense of wonder. Yes, he was stuck in a bond he had not chosen, and yes, the consequences were unknown, but he was alive, learning, and growing, and somehow he knew that this strange journey, full of dangers and discoveries, would change him forever. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows through the twisted trees. Ethan adjusted his pack and took a deep breath. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he felt ready to face it. With Lyra's guidance and the strange pulsing connection of the bond, he would survive. And perhaps along the way he would discover something even more extraordinary. The trust and respect that could grow between two very different beings in an alien world. Ethan and Lyra continued through the alien forest, moving carefully along a narrow path that twisted through towering trees and glowing foliage. The morning mist clung to the air and strange sounds echoed around them. chirps, whispers, and the occasional splash of something moving in a distant stream. Ethan kept scanning their surroundings constantly, alert for predators or other dangers. He had learned quickly that the forest was alive in ways humans could barely understand. Every movement seemed to ripple through the air. Every sound could signal either danger or opportunity. Lyra moved ahead with her usual grace, her golden eyes scanning the shadows. The faint glow of her mark pulsed softly, and Ethan felt its subtle tug on his awareness. He had begun to notice that the bond was more than a strange connection. It seemed to heighten his senses. He could feel the subtle vibrations in the ground, sense movements in the air, and even notice minor shifts in the forest's energy. It was unnerving but also strangely exhilarating. After a while, they reached a wide clearing filled with strange flowers that emitted soft pulses of light. Ethan knelt to examine them, fascinated by the patterns of color and movement. "These are incredible," he said, brushing his fingers across the petals without harming them. "Do your people use plants like these for anything?" Lyra glanced at him. "Some are used for medicine, some for food, and others for ritual purposes. But most are simply part of the forest. They exist for themselves. You humans often try to control nature, but here, balance is more important than dominance." Ethan nodded, realizing how little he truly understood about the ecosystem they were in. Everything here seemed interconnected, and he felt a growing respect for the way Lyra's people had learned to live within it, rather than try to conquer it. Their discussion was interrupted by a sudden rustling from the tree line. Ethan's hand went to his weapon instinctively, and Lyra's posture stiffened. A group of alien predators emerged from the undergrowth, creatures with elongated limbs, sharp claws, and iridescent scales that shifted colors to blend with the forest. Their eyes glowed green, and a low growl resonated through the clearing. "Stay behind me," Lyra whispered, her voice calm but firm. "Do not move unless I tell you." Ethan nodded, heart pounding. He had faced dangerous creatures before, but these predators were unlike anything he had encountered. They moved with unnatural speed, their muscles rippling under shimmering skin. He could feel the subtle pull of the bond guiding his instincts, keeping him alert. Lyra raised her hands, speaking in her melodic language. The sound was commanding, almost hypnotic. One of the creatures paused, tilting its head as if listening. Another crouched lower, preparing to pounce. Ethan held his breath, watching as the creatures seemed to hesitate. "Humans rarely see this," Lyra said quietly, her eyes never leaving the predators. "Many would panic and run. But you are learning. That is good." With a sharp gesture, she released a pulse of energy from her mark. It rippled through the air and struck the closest predator, causing it to freeze in place. The others followed one by one until all of them were immobilized long enough for Lyra to guide Ethan safely past. Ethan exhaled, trying to calm his racing heart. "That was amazing. I didn't know you could do that." Lyra glanced at him. "It is part of our bond with the forest. We can influence creatures, but only with control and respect. You would destroy them if you tried it without understanding. That is why the bond and the mark are so important. It guides you, teaches you." As they moved on, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at her abilities. She was not just graceful or intelligent. She was in harmony with the world around her in a way he had never imagined possible. And somehow the bond was teaching him to be more aware, more connected, and more careful in his actions. They continued for hours, encountering smaller challenges along the way, hidden pitfalls, unstable terrain, and minor predators that tested their coordination. Each time, Ethan relied on the subtle guidance of the bond and Lyra's expertise to navigate safely. He began to notice patterns in the forest, how light shifted with the movement of creatures, how certain sounds signaled changes in the environment. He was learning quickly, and the bond was helping him adapt faster than he ever thought possible. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a river that shimmered with an unusual blue light. Strange plants grew along its banks and small creatures skimmed across the water's surface. Lyra paused, gesturing for Ethan to sit on a smooth rock. "This river leads to a settlement of my people," she explained. "We must be cautious. Not all who live there will understand or accept the bond. Some may see it as a threat." Ethan looked at her, concerned. "A threat, you mean? Other aliens might attack me because of this?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, some will see humans as unpredictable. Some will see the bond as unnatural. You must be careful. Trust is earned and it can be fragile." Ethan frowned, realizing the journey was far from over. He had survived the forest, avoided predators, and begun to understand the bond. But the social challenges ahead could be even more complicated. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The mark had connected them biologically, but now he understood that it carried social implications as well. As they rested, Ethan took the opportunity to ask more about Lyra's species. How do you usually choose your partners? If not through marks like this, what? Lyra considered his question. Our society values connection, understanding, and mutual respect. Bonds are formed naturally, through shared experience and trust. The mark is not commonly used, and when it is treated with great care. It is never accidental until now. Ethan winced, thinking of his own mistake. Yeah, sorry about that. Lyra gave a faint smile. You cannot undo it. That is already clear. What matters now is how we proceed, how we navigate this connection responsibly. You have survived the first stage. Now comes the harder part. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the water. Ethan felt a quiet tension in the air, as if the forest itself were waiting for something. Then, from the far bank of the river, a sudden movement caught his eye. A small group of figures emerged, moving carefully through the trees. They were humanoid, but their features were distinctly alien, with glowing eyes and patterned skin similar to Lyra's, though less elaborate. Lyra's eyes narrowed. These are scouts, she said softly. They will question you. They will test you. You must remain calm and respectful. Do not provoke them. Remember, the bond guides you, it will help. Ethan nodded, feeling the pull of the mark more strongly than ever. He could sense Lyra's focus, her calm determination, and it grounded him. As the scouts approached, he forced himself to stand tall, meeting their gaze without fear. The lead scout stepped forward, eyeing Ethan warily. Who is this human? She asked in a melodic, precise tone. Lyra stepped slightly ahead of him, her mark glowing faintly. He is bound to me, she said simply. The bond is active. He means no harm. The scout's eyes widened slightly. Bounded by the mark? That is unusual. Humans rarely survive the activation. Ethan felt a flicker of pride, though he tried not to show it. He had survived by relying on his instincts, his training, and now, surprisingly, the bond itself. Come, Lyra said, gesturing for Ethan to follow. We will go with them, but you must remain calm. Show respect, and we will be safe. The scouts led them through dense undergrowth, their movements precise and almost silent. Ethan noticed how the forest seemed to respond to them. The glowing plants dimmed or brightened slightly as they passed. The creatures fell silent. He realized that the bond was not just connecting him to Lyra, but to the environment as well. Finally, they reached a small settlement nestled in a grove of massive trees. The structures were organic, shaped from living wood and glowing crystals. Strange bridges connected different levels, and soft lights illuminated pathways. Ethan felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. This was a place unlike any human city he had seen. Alive, vibrant, and completely integrated with nature. The scouts led them to a central building, where Lyra's elders awaited. They were tall and imposing, with elaborate patterns glowing across their skin. Ethan could feel their gaze assessing him, measuring his reactions and judging his worth. Lyra stepped forward, speaking in her language. Ethan listened, picking up fragments of words and tone. He realized they were discussing the bond, the activation, and his presence. His heart raced, but the pull of the mark reminded him to remain calm, to focus and to show respect. After a tense moment, one of the elders spoke to him in a rough approximation of his language, likely learned from observing human explorers. You survived. The bond is active. You are unusual. Why should we accept you? Ethan swallowed, trying to find the right words. I didn't mean to activate the mark, he said honestly. I am willing to learn, to respect your customs, and to follow Lyra. I want to survive, and I want to do it properly. The elder studied him for a long moment, then slowly a faint nod. Very well. You will stay under observation. Your bond may teach us more than your presence alone. But be warned, the forest and our people will test you. Fail, and the consequences are yours to bear. Ethan felt a chill, but also a strange sense of determination. He had survived the forest, navigated alien creatures, and begun to understand the bond. Now he would face his next challenge, earning the trust of Lyra. The morning light filtered softly through the massive trees of the alien settlement, casting streaks of gold and green across the glowing pathways. Ethan walked alongside Lyra, keeping a careful eye on the surroundings. The elders had allowed them to move freely within certain areas, but the subtle tension in the air reminded him that they were still under observation. The bond pulsed faintly between them, a constant reminder of the connection he could neither ignore nor fully understand. Lyra led him toward a central plaza, where the air seemed charged with energy. The plaza was alive with movement. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved gracefully along the bridges and walkways, some stopping to observe the newcomers. Their eyes flicked to Ethan, curiosity and caution mingling in their gaze. It was clear that humans were rare here, and one bound to Lyra through the mating mark was even more unusual. "You must pay attention," Lyra said quietly as they walked. "The elders will observe your actions today. It is not just a test of survival. It is a test of understanding, judgment, and respect. The bond will guide you, but it will not act in place of wisdom." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. The bond had already taught him to sense danger and navigate the forest, but this, social interaction with an entire community, was uncharted territory. He glanced at Lyra, noticing the calm confidence in her movements. She seemed almost serene, but he could sense the subtle tension in her body. She too understood that the stakes were high. As they reached the center of the plaza, a group of elders approached. Their glowing patterns were more intricate than those of the scouts, their presence commanding. The leader, a tall figure with deep amber eyes, stepped forward and spoke in a precise melodic tone. "Lyra has brought you here, human. The bond is active. Today you will undergo the trial that determines whether you may remain in the settlement under observation or face restrictions. Are you prepared?" Ethan swallowed hard. I will do my best," he said honestly. He felt the bond tug gently as if urging him to remain calm and focused. Lyra gave a slight nod. "I will guide you as much as possible, but the trial will test you. You must act with thought and care. The forest and the bond will watch." The trial began immediately. The elders gestured toward a nearby platform where a series of obstacles awaited. Ethan saw that the path included uneven terrain, small creatures darting across the area, and delicate plants that glowed when touched. The elders' expressions were stern, but Ethan could sense that they were also curious. Lyra whispered, "Observe before acting. Move carefully. The bond will alert you to danger, but your choices matter." Ethan took a deep breath and stepped forward. Instantly, he felt the subtle tug of the bond, heightening his senses. He could feel slight vibrations in the ground, hear minute sounds of movement in the air, and notice the faint shimmer of the glowing plants reacting to their presence. It was overwhelming but also exhilarating. A small creature darted across the path, its translucent wings catching the light. Ethan paused, recalling Lyra's earlier lesson. Observation first, action second. He waited for the creature to move away before stepping carefully around it. The bond pulsed gently, almost approvingly, as if acknowledging his choice. Lyra moved beside him, her presence calm and steady. "Good. You are learning quickly. Most humans would have rushed and caused disturbance. Patience is key." As they continued, the trial intensified. The path narrowed, leading to a bridge made of living vines that swayed slightly with each step. Ethan's heart pounded as he balanced carefully, feeling the bond subtly guiding his movements. He noticed how Lyra adjusted her steps to maintain stability, and he tried to mirror her grace without losing focus. Halfway across, the bridge quivered violently. A larger predator, a scaled and winged creature, appeared beneath them, its glowing eyes fixed on Ethan. The bond pulsed sharply, alerting him to danger. Ethan froze, remembering Lyra's lessons from the forest. Panic would be fatal. Lyra's hand brushed against his, a subtle signal. Together they moved in unison, their steps synchronized with the swaying bridge. Ethan felt an odd clarity. The bond seemed to anticipate the predator's movement, giving him just enough time to adjust. They reached the far side safely, and the predator's interest shifted to another part of the platform. Ethan exhaled, feeling both relief and awe. I don't know how we did that," he said. Lyra's eyes softened briefly. "The bond guides. But it does not replace choice. You acted well. That is what matters." The trial continued with more challenges. delicate plants that could snap under pressure, small streams to cross without disturbing the ecosystem, and creatures that required careful negotiation rather than confrontation. Each obstacle tested not only Ethan's physical abilities but also his judgment and understanding of the forest's subtle rules. At one point, a patch of glowing fungi released a cloud of spores when touched. Ethan froze instinctively, remembering that the spores could temporarily disorient anyone who inhaled them. The bond pulsed, guiding him to a safe detour. He moved carefully, ensuring both himself and Lyra avoided the danger. Lyra gave a small nod of approval, and Ethan felt a surge of confidence. By midday, they reached the final stage of the trial, a narrow platform suspended over a shallow pool filled with luminescent water. Small creatures swam within it, their movements causing ripples of light. The elders' voices echoed softly, observing silently. Ethan realized that even a minor mistake could disrupt the delicate balance. Lyra spoke quietly. "Observe the creatures. Notice how they react. Move with care. The bond will help, but your awareness is key." Ethan studied the water, noting the creature's patterns. He took a deep breath and stepped carefully onto the platform, adjusting his weight to avoid startling the water's inhabitants. The bond pulsed gently, a reassuring rhythm that guided him forward. He felt a strange harmony with Lyra. Their movements synchronized, their awareness shared through the bond. Halfway across, a ripple from one of the creatures caused a small shift in the platform. Ethan stumbled slightly and the bond pulsed sharply. Lyra reached out instinctively, her hand brushing his. He steadied himself, feeling an unexpected surge of calm. They moved together, reaching the far edge safely. The elders stepped forward, their glowing patterns shifting subtly. The lead elder spoke in a tone that carried both authority and curiosity. "You have completed the trial. Your actions demonstrated awareness, respect, and adaptability. The bond is active, and it seems to enhance your abilities rather than hinder them. You may remain under observation and further learning will continue. But understand, this is only the beginning. Greater challenges await." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and pride. He had survived the trial, navigated dangers, and learned to trust the bond in ways he had never imagined. Lyra's subtle guidance had been invaluable, but he also realized that he had grown through his own choices, instincts, and perseverance. As they walked back through the settlement, Ethan noticed subtle changes in the way the inhabitants observed him. There was curiosity, yes, but also a degree of respect. He had proven himself in a way that words could not convey. Lyra glanced at him briefly. "You acted well. The bond and the forest have guided you, but your choices were sound. That is what earns trust here." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the day's lessons. "I'm learning. It's hard, but I want to understand. I don't want to make mistakes that hurt anyone, or the bond." Lyra's eyes softened, and for the first time Ethan noticed a faint smile. "That is why you survived. Many would have failed, not from lack of skill, but from lack of understanding. You are not like others. That is clear." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the glowing settlement, Ethan realized that he and Lyra had formed a stronger connection. The bond was more than a strange accident. It was a guide, a teacher, and a link between them that went beyond words. The night fell, and the settlement transformed under the soft glow of bioluminescent plants. Ethan and Lyra found a quiet place to rest away from the eyes of the observers. Ethan felt the bond pulsing gently, a quiet reminder of their shared experiences. He looked at Lyra, realizing that despite the accidental activation of the mark, he had found a companion, a guide, and someone who trusted him. Lyra sat across from him, her gaze thoughtful. "The trial is over, but our journey is not. You have learned well, but the forest, the settlement, and the bond will continue to challenge you. You must remain vigilant, patient, and aware. Only then can you truly understand the connection we share." Ethan nodded, feeling both excitement and apprehension. "I'm ready," he said quietly. "Whatever comes next, I'll face it. With you." Lyra's hand brushed lightly against his, a subtle but deliberate gesture. Ethan felt the bond pulse, a quiet affirmation that they were in this together. The challenges ahead would test them further, but for the first time since the accidental activation, Ethan felt a growing sense of confidence. He was not just a visitor in this alien world, he was a participant, a partner, and someone capable of rising to the challenges that lay ahead. As they rested under the glowing canopy, Ethan reflected on the day. He had faced danger, navigated a complex trial, and learned to trust both himself and the bond. He understood now that survival in this world required more than strength. It required awareness, respect, and cooperation. The next morning, Ethan woke to the soft light filtering through the glowing canopy above. The forest around the settlement was alive with color and sound, a rhythm he had begun to feel in tune with thanks to the bond. Lyra was already awake, standing at the edge of their resting area, her golden eyes scanning the surroundings. The faint pulse of her mark seemed stronger than ever, and Ethan felt it in his chest, a steady reminder of the connection that had changed everything. "Today will be different," Lyra said softly, turning to him. "The elders have decided that your final assessment will take place. It is not merely a test of skill or awareness. It is a test of the bond itself." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. He had survived the forest, completed the trial, and earned the cautious respect of Lyra's people, but he understood that this challenge would be unlike any other. The elders wanted to see how deeply the bond could guide him, and whether he could act with true awareness and unity alongside Lyra. They moved through the settlement, the soft glow of bioluminescent plants illuminating their path. Inhabitants of the grove paused to watch them pass, whispering in their melodic language. Ethan could feel their curiosity, and he knew that they would be judging every movement, every gesture. He glanced at Lyra, whose calm confidence reassured him. At the center of the settlement, a wide platform had been prepared. Strange devices hummed with energy, and a series of obstacles and challenges were arranged in a way that suggested both physical and mental tests. The elders stood around the edges, observing silently, their expressions unreadable. Lyra stepped forward and spoke in her language. Ethan could not understand the words fully, but the tone conveyed instruction and guidance. The bond pulsed sharply, and he understood the essence. They would face challenges that required unity, trust, and awareness. The first obstacle was a series of platforms suspended over a shallow pool. The surfaces shifted slightly with movement, and beneath them, strange creatures glided through the water, their presence adding an element of danger. Ethan focused on the bond, feeling Lyra's awareness subtly guiding his steps. He moved carefully, adjusting his weight, watching the reactions of the creatures below. Lyra mirrored him, their movements synchronized. Halfway across, a platform tipped unexpectedly. Ethan felt the bond tug sharply, warning him to adjust his stance. He shifted, finding balance just in time, and continued forward. The elder's eyes followed every step, but Ethan felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He was learning to trust not only the bond, but his own instincts. After crossing the platforms, they faced a series of obstacles that required both strategy and observation. Delicate bridges, swaying vines, and clusters of glowing plants blocked their path. Ethan realized that rushing or forcing a path would not succeed. He began to anticipate Lyra's movements, aligning himself with her actions, and allowing the bond to guide their pace. At one point, a cluster of luminescent plants began to pulse erratically, releasing tiny spores that could disorient or confuse anyone who inhaled them. Ethan paused, feeling the subtle warning of the bond. He signaled to Lyra, and they adjusted their path, stepping carefully around the plants without disturbing them. The bond pulsed softly, almost approvingly, and Ethan felt a surge of confidence. The next challenge was a mental one. Strange devices projected illusions, images that seemed real, testing perception and awareness. Ethan saw visions of himself failing, falling, or being separated from Lyra. His first instinct was to panic, but the bond tugged again, grounding him in reality. He focused on Lyra, on the connection between them, and recognized the illusions for what they were. Together they moved through the test, stepping past visions that could have overwhelmed a less attentive participant. Lyra's hand brushed his briefly as they navigated the illusions. Ethan felt the bond's pulse intensify, a comforting reminder that they were in this together. He realized that the test was not just about skill or intelligence, it was about trust, understanding, and unity. The bond had brought them to this point, but their actions, awareness, and cooperation were what would see them through. The final challenge appeared suddenly. A large creature emerged from the shadows of the platform. It was massive, with glistening scales and powerful limbs. Its eyes glowed with intelligence, and its presence radiated a subtle but unmistakable challenge. Ethan froze momentarily, feeling the bond pulse sharply. Lyra stepped in front of him, her posture calm but alert. You must not fear, Lyra whispered. Trust the bond. Trust yourself. We face it together. Ethan nodded, focusing on the rhythm of the bond. He felt Lyra's awareness merging with his own, guiding him to notice the creature's movements and anticipate its reactions. The creature lunged suddenly, and Ethan moved instinctively, dodging to the side. Lyra mirrored his movement, and together they navigated the encounter, using the bond to coordinate their actions. The creature tested them repeatedly, each movement faster and more unpredictable than the last. Ethan felt the bond strengthening, guiding him to anticipate, react, and adjust in real time. He realized that he and Lyra were functioning as a single unit, their awareness and instincts linked through the mark. After what felt like hours, the creature stopped, observing them with glowing eyes. It made a low, resonant sound and then retreated into the shadows. Ethan exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body. The bond pulsed gently, a steady reminder of their shared success. The elders stepped forward, their expressions unreadable. Then slowly they nodded. The lead elder spoke, his voice carrying authority and curiosity. You have completed the assessment. You have demonstrated awareness, cooperation, and understanding. The bond is active and it enhances rather than hinders. You have earned the trust of the settlement, and the journey of learning and connection may continue. Ethan felt a mixture of relief and pride. He had survived physical challenges, mental tests, and even a confrontation with a powerful creature. More importantly, he had learned to trust the bond and act in harmony with Lyra. Lyra gave him a small smile, her golden eyes reflecting pride and subtle warmth. You have done well. Today proves that the bond is strong, and that together we can face whatever challenges lie ahead. But remember, learning never ends. The forest, the creatures, and our people will continue to test us. You must remain vigilant and aware. Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment and growth. The accidental activation of the mark had led him to this point, through danger, discovery, and learning. But now he understood the depth of the connection he shared with Lyra. It was not simply a biological bond. It was trust, awareness, and partnership. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the glowing settlement in soft shades of blue and green, Ethan and Lyra walked side by side through the forest. The air was filled with the soft hum of life, and Ethan felt a deep connection not only to Lyra but to the alien world around him. The bond pulsed gently, a steady rhythm that reminded him of their shared journey. Ethan looked at Lyra, and for the first time he realized the true significance of the mark. It had been accidental, yes, but it had led to understanding, growth, and partnership. He had faced challenges he could never have imagined, survived dangers that would have overwhelmed most humans, and learned to trust an alien being and himself in ways he never thought possible. Lyra glanced at him, reading his thoughts through the subtle awareness of the bond. You have grown, Ethan, not only in skill but in understanding. That is why the bond is strong. You respect it and it respects you. Ethan smiled faintly. I never thought an accident could lead to this. Learning, trust, and connection. I'm grateful, and I want to keep learning with you. Lyra's eyes softened and the bond pulsed more strongly, almost like a heartbeat. Then we will continue together. Whatever the future holds, we will face it side by side. The mark binds us, but our choices and trust will guide us. The night deepened around the settlement, and the forest seemed to hum in quiet agreement. Ethan felt a sense of peace he had never known, a balance between caution and confidence, between fear and trust. The accidental activation of the mark had changed his life, but he had learned to embrace it, grow through it, and understand the depth of connection it brought. Together, Ethan and Lyra sat under the glowing canopy, watching the lights of the settlement flicker softly. The bond pulsed steadily, a living rhythm that connected them, guiding them and reminding them that they were no longer alone. They had faced danger, tests, and uncertainty, and they had emerged stronger, united, and ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. The bond was no longer a mystery. It was a guide, a teacher, and a partner. And for Ethan, it was a reminder that even the most unexpected accidents could lead to growth, trust, and an extraordinary connection that would shape the rest of his life.